Everyone to the 9th annual IBM Marketplace Survey results. Hard to believe we're in 2023. IBM's had this long roadmap for this AS400 I-Series IBM platform, and here we are in our 9th year of the Marketplace Survey. I'm Tom Huntington. I'll be your host and moderator today, talking about the best kept secret in IT. And this event will be recorded. We will also provide some handouts at the end, so if you do miss it or you want to share with a colleague, it'll be out on the Fortra website. And yes, I said Fortra. Help Systems had a name change on November 2nd. That's all it was. We still have a large commitment to the IBM Marketplace. As you'll see with this survey, we will continue to do this for many years to come. And very excited again to be here with you and get started with our presenters. I guess first we'll just kind of work our way left to right, and Brandon Peterson with IBM Marketing. Brandon, how are you doing?
Hey, good, doing well, Tom. Thank you again for having me on.
And Brandon, what are some of your responsibilities for the IBM community?
Sure, so I'm the product marketing manager for IBM and our IBM portfolio, as well as our Power scale-out servers. So I work across the business with product management, such as Dan, our digital marketing, campaign generation teams to drive the IBM business.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here, and I'm sure you get a lot of suggestions from business partners and customers around the globe on how to market IBM, right? Let's turn it over to Dan Sun. Dan, how are you doing? And what do you do for it?
Yep, good morning, everybody. So I'm an IBM product manager. So along with Allison Butterall, we are co-product managers. So she's been around supporting this platform for many years. I have been also. I had about a 20-year tech sales role, and then I actually started my career in the then AS400, but IBM Support Center. So pretty much my whole career been supporting IBM in some form.
Well, thank you, Dan. Great to have you with us. And Timothy Prickett Morgan, editor-in-chief of IT Jungle. What do you do for this community, Tim?
I talk.
Besides harass IBM, right?
Exactly. I'm a co-editor actually with Alex. I changed my title a couple of years ago because he and I kind of bear equal responsibilities. So I'm like Dan and Allison as well. Yeah, I mean, we just watch what's going on and we try to take a look at the other parts of the IT market that Alex and I both have different jobs in addition to this one. And we try to bring what we know about here out to the world and say, hey, we saw that 30 years ago. You're talking about it now. And similarly, we see some of the trends going on in other parts of the IT community, and we try to infuse that into the IBM market as well.
Well, great to have you with us, Timothy. And then, of course, Mr. Steve Will, the IBM CTO and Chief Architect and Distinguished Engineer, too. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much. This is a continuation of everything that I've been doing now as Chief Architect now for, I guess it's 15 plus years. The making sure that we know what's going on with our customers, meeting with customers a lot, and then driving all the new enhancements. It's a great job.
You do have a great job. You've got great technology. And Steve, I can't believe it. This is the first time we've had you on the Marketplace Survey Results webinar. So great to have you with us. Thank you for joining. And I think we're going to go lights out on the cameras now, and get into the meat of today's presentation. I want to first of all start out with highlighting what happened in 2022 around the IBM platform. Well, to start out the year in January, IBM had been working on some technologies to support the concept of virtual serial numbers, and they delivered on that in January so that customers could have a partition with a virtual serial number that could move around to support the ever-changing climate with live partition mobility and the move to the cloud and all those things. And then in May of 2022 marked the dates of IBM i 7.5 being delivered, another yet new operating system for you customers out there on IBM i. Hardly sitting still, IBM also did technical refreshes level 6 and technical refresh level 12 for IBM 7.4 and 7.3, and then introduced with 7.5 Merlin, a new modernized development platform. And at the same time, many of us met in New Orleans at the Common Power Up event in person. Meanwhile, our colleagues over in Europe were planning Common Europe and met in June in Spain. And I know some of my partners here with me today had gone to that event. I wish I would have. It looked beautiful. Now, to follow on with Power 10, which of course is the server technology that supports the IBM I, AIX, and Linux on Power operating systems, they delivered the scale out servers for yet another new hardware release, and I know they're already working on Power 11. Then we turn our attention to September of 2022, and the IBM team put out a IBM I system subscription offering where you can fully subscribe to the operating system and the hardware as a package. And then October of 2022, we had Common again. The user group met on premise and virtual from St. Louis, Missouri. Happened to myself be there and enjoy going up in the arch there. And then, of course, as we rolled out and wrapped up the year, December of 2022, IBM wasn't done with the operating system and came out with Technical Refresh 1 for 7.5, TR7, and a surprise TR13 for IBM I 7.3. Wow, what a busy year. Steve or Dan, anything I might have missed along the way that you'd like to add?
I think you covered it pretty well. We've got lots of stuff. Of course, we do lots of different events, but you got to stop somewhere. So sure.
Right. Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't handle all the local user groups yet. Very good. Yeah, Dan?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, so we had the system subscription in September, but we probably missed that in May, we announced the P05 software subscription. So you could buy, if you had an existing system, the 914, now 1014, you could do software subscription, and then we created the bundle later. So yeah, you're going to hear a lot from us this year on subscription offerings.
Very good. It's a very big trend in the marketplace. So here's our agenda today. We're going to cover first of all, the survey results related to what's in the data center. And keep in mind, the data center is kind of a loose term. It could be in the cloud or at an MSP, which is very common today. And then IT initiatives around the platform, the outlook for IBM I, demographics, and Fortra. And yes, I apologize. I have an uppercase I there. I'm probably the only one that noticed that, but I will point it out. So polling question number one, though, before we get started, is we want to know how you're keeping up to date in the community around IBM I platform and the community itself. What are you doing to educate yourself and keep up on this technology? You can select more than one option here. Are you attending Common or a local user group? Are you doing online webinars from IBM, vendor online webinars, industry newsletters, and social networks? Or are you going to the IBM I homepage to get your information about what's happening and what are all the sources you're using? Okay, as I kind of guessed, it looks like our audience out there is using many of these different technologies or information sources to keep up on the platform. Yep, it looks like, okay, so Common and local user groups looks like is kind of neck and neck with the IBM I homepage, but the IBM online webinars are very popular. The vendor online webinars, very popular. Okay, so let me close this result. I realize you can't see what I'm talking about, so let me share that, and you should be able to see now that the online webinars from vendors and IBM were the most popular, followed by the industry newsletters. Tim, good to hear that, and the social networks, and then of course IBM homepage and attending things like Common and user groups. So thank you again for answering that. Appreciate that. Good to have you participate. Okay.
I'll do it quickly. So, historically, and this is certainly true now, about 2/3 of the base is using one or two machines, and this is obviously across a company, not across a data center. There's nobody with more than 31 use runners or machines in a single data center, but that would be nice. MSPs might do that, but anyway. It's interesting that there are multiple machines, even in a world where we've had LPAR since 1998. But the reasons that drive that are there's data sovereignty issues across national boundaries, and also we have old habits. We make a test dev machine and keep it separate, and you can't consolidate everything all the time. So sometimes you have language differences and whatnot, and you want to preserve those differences.
Yeah, I get that. Dan, what do you think is the driving force behind these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to see that if we look at our kind of the SMB or the entry space of our systems, that having two systems is very common. And of course, if we look at, HADR, having a second system for high availability is probably driving that second physical system, because the next screen we'll talk about partitions, and that's very popular, but you do need to have some geographic distance between systems if you're looking for HADR. So I think that would drive the having at least a couple multiples, and then customers deploying different workloads, different generations of system. I know a lot of our larger customers, they still have workloads on boxes and they're buying new boxes for new workloads. So that would tend to drive a new system. So this very common to see the multiples at the low end and also multiples at the high end.
Yeah. And speaking of partitions, Tim, what are your thoughts on the partitions in IBMI?
Well, the number has been on the rise for years and years. If you go back over the 9 surveys, the average number's on the increase. But when I was thinking of questions or statements here, I had a question I want to ask Steve and Dan. What's the largest number of partitions you guys have ever seen in the base on a machine? This idea. Like what's...
It's hard. I mean, Dan could say that I've worked with some, very large customers, and some of our very large customers have very large partitions. You're talking 80, 90, 100 cores in a partition. And then of course, those same large customers or different large customers could have lots of very small partitions. And of course, a lot of our service providers who are, hosting customers would have, fractional and small partitions for each individual customers, that they're hosting. So I don't think I have a exact number, but it's probably you can do up to 20 cores or 20 partitions on a given processor core. So if somebody could run on, something that small, physically the system can do it. And now with Power 10, having over 200 cores, the potential is huge if you really want to go that small.
Yeah, and you're not running out of space is the point. I mean, there's lots of room for partitions.
That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, I have seen multiple occasions where somebody has consolidated between 20 and 30 smaller machines into single partitions on machines. So the 20 to 30 partitions has happened with multiple customers. I have seen people planning for as many as 50 partitions of IBMI. I don't know that anybody actually got there, because if they're going to do that kind of consolidation, they may well consolidate what those partitions are doing. But in any case, the capacity to be able to do it is certainly there, and people are happy to know that they aren't going to be limited.
Yep, and IBMI had such a great track record with our work management and subsystems that you can do so much different workloads within a partition. So there's a value to moving workloads, let's say, to a separate partition with a different operating system relief or PTF level, or et cetera. But a lot of customers are very common of, in a partition, I could run different workloads just fine.
Very good. Yeah, and I'll just comment in on the partition one too. I have seen customers with 200 partitions, so cool. It does happen out there. More commonly, it's the 20 to 30 size number of partitions that people run. So it's very good. Well, let's turn our attention to the operating system. People are always asking, are people staying current in this marketplace? And Steve, over to you on the trends with the IBMI operating system.
Right. So as everybody looks at these, recognize that the dates that are on there represent the 1 year past when the question was asked, right? So the 2023 is today, but the question was asked in 2022. So here's one of the things that is pretty clear to me is that 7.4 is, becoming a workhorse, but it was the 7.3 release that has been the workhorse for the past several years. If you look at where the numbers have gone, from 2019 to 2020, while 7.3 grew a little bit, then it was stable for a few years. All of the new work, or all of the migrating workloads off of the prior releases, 7.2 and older, went into growing the 7.4 base. So now finally 7.4 is the most popular, most used release, and we're just beginning to see uptake of 7.5 because it just came out last year. So that 7.3 has been kind of the workhorse for the last several years, and now people are going to be needing to move forward and have obviously begun moving forward onto 7.4. So it's not at all it's not at all surprising what we're seeing. It takes customers a while, but when they move 2 releases up more often than anything else, right?
Yeah. And there was that big hurdle between, 6.1, 7.1 for people. And I think that is even now weighed as you see how low those numbers are.
Yeah.
Tim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, and I've said this before, but this survey is a reflection of the active, what I call the active part of the base.
Sure.
I have no problem believing this is what's going on, but there's a whole inactive part of the base that doesn't do exactly what we said. They lag by a lot more than this data indicates. And I can only do that anecdotally from talking to business partners about saying, well, I still got guys on V5R3 and I got, 50 of them. So what do I do with that, right? So I often take this data and I skew it in those 2 different bases. But an observation is that the applications drive the release level. And if you don't control your code and you're on a legacy third-party ERP suite, and you didn't pay your maintenance on that code, and you didn't pay your maintenance to IBM, you're stuck. And there's a lot of people that are stuck. But those who control their code, write their own applications, or keep them current with their vendors, they can be part of this. They can be part of this curve, and they can do their skip release upgrades, and that's what I see here. So I think this reflects the active part of the base accurately, but I'm not so sure it does for the rest of the base.
Sure. Fair enough. Steve, I know IBM has a roadmap for this operating system. Any comments on this?
I just wanted to point out, I started talking about this a lot last year. As of 2022, we're now delivering more code, more functional pieces with the in-between release. So technology refreshes and the other stuff that we do to deliver between releases. So we're delivering you more capabilities via those mechanisms than with major releases. And we only put those capabilities on the 2 most recent releases. So those folks on the previous screen who are on 7.3, they're going to have a lot of great function on 7.3, but they're not going to get a lot of enhancements out of that. But everybody who's moving forward is going to be able to continue to get those, because again, most of what we do is now going to be targeted at those between release delivery mechanisms. There's still a need for major releases, and I'm working those, but most of the stuff comes out in between.
Yeah, and Dan, what about the IBM support roadmap? I think that's important for customers too.
Yeah, it's really good that we make sure our customers are kind of crystal clear, but like what Steve said, now with 7.4 and 7.5 kind of out there, those are our major releases that we're enhancing. So older releases are not, getting functionality. We tend to have like a 10-year life cycle of a release, give or take. So 7 years of normal support, 3 years of extended support. We got 2 releases, 7.1 and 7.2, who are already in that service extension time frame, which really was meant for customers to give them more time to get to a current release, not really keep on prolonging the release. And you can see that next year is kind of when those are ending. So hopefully those customers are making the plans to get to something current. We announced in September that 7.3 has reached its kind of normal 7-year time frame, normal support. So this year in 2023, in April, we're going to stop selling our marketing 7.3, and then in September, we're going to stop supporting 7.3, and it will then transition to the service extension. So 7.4 and 7.5, as Steve had showed, is where we're putting our new enhancements, all of our current feature functionality. All the arrows are pointing right, so we're still going to be coming out with future releases and new enhancements. And as also Steve had mentioned, if you look on the upgrade paths, a lot of our customers go release to release upgrades, but it is very common for our customers to do the N-2. So if they're at 7.3, they now know 7.3 is ending, they can jump to 7.4 or just jump to 7.5.
Yeah, Dan, and I know your background's a bit more on the hardware. What are your thoughts on the progression with the Power technology itself?
Yeah, so then this kind of also follows that IBM operating system release, chart. So our customers as we rolled out Power 9, people moved off Power 8 and Power 7 hardware. We started at the end of 21 with our Power 10 enterprise systems, but most of our IBMI customers, from a volume standpoint, of course, were on the scale out systems, which came available in July of 22. So this chart kind of reflects that, kind of like the IBMI releases, that we saw a progression to get to kind of Power 9 as the normal system, and then now that we have introduced Power 10, I'd see Power 9 will flatten and Power 10 should increase. The older systems, those hopefully will continue to keep on going down. Last October, we announced that Power 8 is going end of service in various dates in 2024. So hopefully customers that are on Power 8 are looking at moving to Power 9, or maybe better yet, Power 10. So kind of like Timothy said too, we have some customers that just sit on the system and ride it for a long time, and we're hoping that customers, especially the ones that do the survey, do tend to keep more current, look forward, and get the benefits of faster systems, the maintenance, leveraging technologies like NVMe storage, et cetera, that you just can't get on older hardware.
Very good. Tim, your thoughts on the hardware?
Yeah, I think a couple observations. So first of all, everybody is stretching out the amount of time that they keep a server. So that applies to Google. They are historically famous for saying, well, we upgrade a third of our fleet every year. So every 3 years, there's a complete refresh. Their data centers, and they throw a whole data center out. they don't move things in and out. They just like build a new data center next to it with a new iron. But even they, and Amazon is doing the same thing, they're trying to stretch it to 3, 4, 5 years, and that's even with price performance and performance per watt increases in the newer hardware. They try to make it work because the capital expenditure is so immense. They want to try to wring more money out of that. So easier to do that on a newer machine, obviously, but you've spent money on it. And the older machine, it's not costing you anything except electricity to keep going. So everybody does that. Second thing, the capacity increases that IBM delivers with Power every 3 years are enormous. So that also stretches things out, because the amount of capacity for certain customers that IBM delivers is much larger than their own growth in their transaction volumes and workloads they add to the machine. So that'll stretch it out. So I would not be surprised that it takes a little bit longer for Power 10 to ramp up too. So you have all those different factors underway.
Very good. Thank you, Tim. And nice, interest and insight in comparison to other things that are happening in IT. So Dan, this is the support roadmap for the hardware itself. I think it's a good summary of where you guys are at.
Yeah, I think this is good for customers, again, to be aware of as they look at their IT landscape. What do we support on a given release? So when we introduced Power 10 at the end of 21, we had 7.3 and 7.4. So it's very common for us to support 2 releases on new hardware. So that makes sense that we enabled that. And then when 7.5 came out, we enabled that also on Power 10. But when we look at the new release, we look and say, well, we're not going to support a new release on all older hardware. So we picked up the hardware that we're currently selling, which is Power 9 and Power 10. And we'd actually had done a planning statement, in 2021 saying, oh, by the way, 7.4, is the last release that will be, technically supported on Power 8. So no surprise then last year when we announced 7.5, it was not supported on Power 8. So we kind of told people that. So I think this chart is helpful when people are looking at, if they are running older hardware, even if we take them out of support, to get our cool new things that we're delivering in 7.4 and 7.5, there has to be some level of currency on the hardware.
Right. And so then as we look at 2023 plans for upgrades, both the operating system and the hardware, these are the numbers that we got from the survey this year. Tim, what do you think about these numbers?
Well, the good news is that the portion of people who say no is smaller, and all the other ones, except for hardware only, have gotten larger. And the great news is that the hardware only is down by 4% compared to last year, down to 6%, but it's up to 35% for hardware and software together compared to 28% in the prior years. So, and these are pretty consistent numbers. The 2020, 2021, and 2022 were all roughly the same. So I think we're seeing a very healthy upgrade cycle here. At least planning wise. We'll see what people do, right? That depends on the economy, their own particular business, whatever, but it's good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Dan, as people are upgrading, it's nice to see that they're certainly considering Power 10. What do you think about that?
Yeah, last year, of course, with the net new release and the scale out Power 10 hardware, it's no surprising people are saying, yep, we're going to upgrade both. A lot of customers don't do them at the exact same time, so maybe they'll get to their get to the newer release and then roll in hardware, those type of capabilities. But yeah, if I look at this number, it is definitely higher. The last survey said we had 73% of the customers that were knowing about Power 10 had a plan. And now we look at the chart, we have 90% effectively saying, yes, I've already gone there, I'm going and already have made the plan to go there, or I plan to go there. So definitely a higher number of, moving to the new server for all the great things that it has, which also could be the other side of the coin is getting off older hardware that, maintenance costs, reliability, those type of things, the risks of staying on older hardware. So yeah, this is good to see that customers are making an investment in both operating system and new infrastructure.
Very good, yeah. And then as we look at the IBMI platform and understand what else is running alongside of it, it's interesting to see year over year the changes in the market related to this. And Steve, if you have some thoughts on what we're seeing here as results.
Well, of course, it's been common for decades now that IBMI clients also have Windows Server running things. That's expected, and the change here is really in the growth of Linux as a side-by-side server with IBMI, not only because Power can do both in the same box, but because there's so much moving into the IT landscape that is Linux-based. I will point out that based on this survey, having 8% say that they use Z reflects something that the rest of the survey reflects as well. We had a lot of folks who were in larger organizations answering questions here. And of course, many of our largest clients not only use IBMI, but also use the mainframe. It's still wonderful to me every time the survey comes out and I see how many people are answering IBMI only. I mean, it's great. Basically, the world will tell you that you need multiple operating systems. And for a lot of things, I know that that's true, but there are a lot of people who can do everything they want to do on IBMI.
It is amazing. I run into those customers every year as I'm talking to them. So it's a fun fact. And, we because of my little outage earlier, I'm going to kind of skip maybe a couple presenters on some of the slides just to kind of keep things moving along. We got a lot of content. So IBMI in the cloud, we've been hearing a lot about that and running workloads in the cloud. Dan, back over to you to talk about cloud.
Yeah, it was interesting, cloud way back when was a destination. Cloud is a physical thing. You had to go somewhere. And now I think, cloud could be a set of capabilities, which I think that, the majority of people think about it is still a place. And, if I look at our, Power Virtual Server offering, that we have a lot of, healthy MSPs and CSPs that offer, things. So moving a workload, if customers want to get out of the data center, but still stay on I, which this survey kind of reflects, that's a very good normal thing. Power Virtual Server, last year we saw growth in the whole platform and we saw growth in IBMI customers, moving there. And this chart also kind of shows that we have a very, healthy amount of customers that they're happy on-prem and maybe don't have a need or desire to move. But those that have moved, there's, I do see people think test development or maybe backups is a way to kind of dip your toe in, but it's a full, our cloud offerings are definitely, fully fledged, so you can move your production just fine there because it's the same operating system on the same hardware. So yeah, I think it's great that people have, it's not a push to cloud, push to another platform. It's, where is it best to run your IBMI workload, and it may be on your data center or somebody else's data center.
Very good. Tim, any thoughts on the cloud movement?
I wish we had this data 4 years ago. We could see some trend data. We only added it this year. But the interesting bit is that, subscription model version, like we got to talk about how do people pay for it as well as where it is. And there's different things, right? Because now you can get a utility priced machine that looks and feels to you like a cloud, but it's in your data center. How are we going to talk about that? But anyway, I would have suspected that DR and backup would be a higher percentage, that, and test development would be a slightly smaller percentage based on what other people do, and then core applications would be lower. This is interesting, and this is an IBMI statement, I think, in that the core business applications are as used as these other things. It tells me that this is already a mature market in some ways, because they're the same percentages.
Yeah, we're seeing some success, right? I mean, that's really a good point.
Talk about it being a new market, but it's behaving like it's an established one.
Exactly. Well, we know high availability has been around for this platform for many years. Dan, what are your thoughts on where we're at with high availability?
Yeah, I think, I have this conversation often, with customers of, tape was so well known and still very popular with our customers, but there's so many alternatives today of, okay, if I want things that look like a tape, that's where, virtual tape libraries, which is kind of storage based, will do. But if I want to get the data off my data center, I can leverage products like Cloud Storage Solutions or other vendors, to get the data off. And, there's great options for different, data points for HADR. If I want synchronous now with 7.4, and more of our customers getting a 7.4 or later, you have DB2 Mirror as an active, option for our customers. But if they don't need that, we have Power HA. There's other vendor solutions that can give you that. So I think it's healthy to see that people are leveraging something. I'm always surprised when you ask them about their backup strategy, they maybe look at you like, well, I don't know. It's like, well, you should have a strategy, because, if you have an outage, if you have data corruption, you need to have a backup. So it's good to see people moving to newer technologies. And the great thing is you have choices based on, what do you want to pay? What's your concern for data loss? What's your concern for, time of an outage? And
gosh, it's a great point. You got to have backups. I don't care what platform you're on. Please have backups. Okay, we don't have enough time to get into that. Let's talk about IT initiatives. And Tim, over to you to talk about this one first, the top concerns.
Well, I think the first observation is I'm always looking at reducing IT spending. How bad is it? And that's number 10 this year, was number 6 last year, and a couple of years ago was over at number 5. So yay, it's moving to the right.
It's interesting in a year where we're seeing inflation and all those kinds of things, right, worldwide.
That's it, right? The economy's weird, but we still got to do stuff, and all that stuff is to the left, right? So, and migrating applications to the cloud is number 8 this year. It was number 10 last year, so that one's moving to the left, and that's a good thing. I think it's on people's mind, not necessarily just to save money, but to have a more flexible model and all that stuff. The modernizing apps, HA and IBMI skills, they're about the same. Security went down. What is that? You explain this to me. You're the security guy. 75% last year, 68%. That should be 100%. Period. I don't. You would
think, right?
I don't understand.
Yeah, Steve, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's those top 4 have been the top 4 for a while, though I think modernizing moved up to 2 from where it was in 3. I think it has to do with the people who are answering. When we look at the roles of the people who are answering, there are a lot of people who are very engaged in IBMI who recognize the value of modernizing their applications, but their jobs may not be as connected to security. And that's where I think maybe the drop has come, because you're right. Every company should be and probably is concerned with security. It's just a matter of who's answering the question and whether that matters to them.
Very good. And speaking of cybersecurity, so since that's top 1 on here, we did have a few more questions in the survey related to cybersecurity. Since Fortra, we do a lot of cybersecurity, hence the name change. And you can see on the list here, just a couple of things I'll point out I found interesting is privileged user management on IBMI that usually deals with all object authority. And we see a larger rise in interest in implementing that along with multi-factor authentication. At 20% of the customers who took it are looking at those technologies. For me, it always starts with exit point manager and exit point monitoring on this platform as a way of really protecting your data from FTP, DB2, SQL, ODBC, things like that that people need to track. And so good to see a healthy investment in these various technologies that help with additional security around the platform. And then Steve, I know there's a lot of cybersecurity challenges. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I really do, again, come back to who answered the question. There are a lot of developers who feel like they need to have more security knowledge. There are a lot of administrators who feel like they need to have more security knowledge. And it's because of the things then that follow it. The fact that threats are constantly changing and that they have to also meet business needs means that people really need to get more information. I'm certainly aware that ransomware is a big issue out in the marketplace. So I'm not surprised to see the number there. I am a little surprised that there are actually 8% of the people who say they don't have a security challenge at all.
No, yeah.
Even
good for them, right?
Yeah, but good for them. Yeah. Well, I never get the impression from my customers, though, that their security challenges are related to things they can't do on IBMI. It's
right.
that they may not know how to do what they need to do on IBMI, and that's a good thing to know.
Yeah, and I mean, our stance on it is you guys have built a very securable system, right? People need to turn the dials the correct way, and that's the education piece, right? And then we look at, regulations. Regulations drives cybersecurity investments in a way so that people can pass the regulations and do the check mark, but it doesn't necessarily always mean you're secure. Pretty common to see GDPR as it's really popped up around the world as a top concern for people. Sarbanes-Oxley's been around for a long time, so is PCI. The number who have none has decreased over the years. There are still people with no real driving regulation, but just because you're not a publicly traded company, or you're not having credit card transactions, or you're not in healthcare, doesn't mean you don't have cybersecurity concerns. I think that's really, when we started this survey 9 years ago, there were people who literally said, I have no concerns at all about cybersecurity. That's changed. It really has. So let's turn our attention to different applications right on IBMI, and over to you, Steve, to talk about this one first.
So if you've been listening to me talk for the last year and a half, one of the key things we always have to recognize is that about 3/4 of our clients have some sort of in-house written application, even though in total, most of our clients are running some package that comes from some ISV somewhere. There are very, very few clients who write their applications, and then that's the only thing that they have is in-house applications. Most people still have something in addition to what they're running. And so this is one of the reasons why I think the modernization thing is always in the top 4, because there's so many folks who have code that needs to be modernized if they're going to continue to get the value out of IBMI. And then the fact that there's 30% of people who say other write-in, well, that makes sense, because our marketplace has thousands, literally thousands of active ISV packages. So you're not going to be able to list all of them there.
Yeah. Tim, over to you. I know this is always an interesting one for you.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't ask the in-house question for years and years, and I complained about it, and we started asking it, and then the data sort of reflected.
Correct.
But the other interesting bit is that not only do they have third-party applications, but many of them had access to the source code, and they so heavily modified it that it is effectively their own code. In many cases, they have got themselves in a place where they have to support an application they didn't start to write to begin with. So it's weird, but I look at it this way. There's maybe 400,000 RPG developers out there and Java developers working on this platform. I don't know, it's somewhere in that ballpark. Yay! Next.
So,
that means we have a vibrant market. Let's go.
Yeah, we do. And speaking of, it's a great segue into the development language question. And Steve, we want to turn this one over to you to talk about.
Right. So over the past several years, you've seen that below the things that everybody expects, RPG, SQL, CL, the next several include open languages. Now, Java didn't start out open, it's technically open now. But when you've got PHP, Python, and Node.js, each with 20% of the of the survey, it just says that people are using these multiple languages, including the open languages, to get things done. But it's also important, and we pay attention to this, 90+%, and that number has grown as we have modernized RPG to be able to do things in free format and modular and so on. So that investment in making an RPG that can help customers with the requirements they have today, when supplemented with things like the open languages, it seems to be paying off.
It really has. Yeah. And you can see the breakout into the various modern ones. And Steve, what about open source too? I know this is something you're also very interested in.
It's always difficult to anticipate what people are going to need to run on the platform from an open source packages. Now, of course, Apache's been there for a long time, but second on the list is Git, because so many people are moving to that source control that helps them do DevOps, right? So we have been looking out ahead and engaging the Open on I community to make sure that we have the right things for people to take advantage of here. So, we've got a whole team looking at these sorts of things. What you're going to see more and more of in the future is that there are going to be particularly open source tools that are used for management of the platforms, things that can be applied across multiple architectures, including IBM I, that are going to be used for managing IBM I. So we'll probably have to continue to change the potential answers here every year based on what's hot.
And when we do evaluate this area quite a bit. So we have done that. The other thing is rationale out on the platform, and probably no surprise, Fortra Help Systems works on rationale in the background for customers. But we've seen steady growth in this area too, Tim, or Steve rather.
That's right. Yeah. As people have wanted modern software, they've wanted to use modern tools, and we, between us, have been investing in making sure that this tool can help them get there. So it's nice to see that in total, more and more of our customers have been taking advantage of that. It's not the only thing out there, but it's a very powerful tool, and I'm happy so much uptake has happened.
And it's worth the investment because of the productivity gains. And if you look at the IBM I skills question, it gives the new developer something more modern to use versus SEU or PDM or something like that, right? So my focus in the market has always been around automation, and it really kind of makes me grin to see that we're at 77% of the survey respondents saying that they're running their system totally unattended. Great to see. This is a platform because of work management and CL and the control languages and open source and everything else that comes with it. You can run this platform unattended. It's more of a mindset than it is necessarily can't do kind of thing. All right, so let's look at the outlook here as we look towards the end of the survey and talk about this platform. Brandon, I know we've had you quietly waiting out there. What are your thoughts on business applications that run on IBM I?
Yeah, well, it's great to see our install bases are still running the majority of their business applications on IBM I. And I talked to a lot of our clients. If hopefully you've been to our IBM I client story webpage. If not, go check that out. But pretty much every client I interview for a story, they tell me they're running the majority of their critical business applications on the platform. So, which is a testimony to the reliability and availability of IBM I.
It really is. It really is. And then, the steady commitment to the platform and what customers are thinking about with this platform. Tim, if you could handle this one first, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So this pie chart's a little different from the ones we've done in prior years, in that now we can ask the question, are you going to stay on IBM I but move to the cloud? And that's 12%. I actually believe that number. And in the number where they say they're going to migrate all their applications to a new operating system platform, I don't believe that number. I've seen that number over the years. The migration rate that would be anticipated from what people think they say they're going to do, they should be gone. We wouldn't be talking today, and that it didn't happen. So I think people are understandably optimistic about the cloud, and this takes some of the pressure off of them to have to maybe move to another platform. And I think that they think it's easier to move off a platform than it actually is. The attrition rate is what, 1%, maybe 2% here, and I don't even think it's that high anymore. And yes, we lose a few a year, a few thousand a year. We gain 1,000 or 2 a year, but we're not we're not losing ground here. We're not. And any data that I have.
It's a great point. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think some of it echoes, my kind of previous discussion on, from again, our cloud, our Power Virtual Server offering. We do see customers, who have decided to move off-prem, but not leave the platform. So they're leveraging, our cloud option. I know, again, our MSPs have a healthy market, so customers are moving there. This chart shows that a lot of our customers, over 50%, they're not doing anything different. They're not looking to change, and in fact, they're probably looking to continue to grow and either organic growth or just maybe bringing new things to the platform. So I think that shows that for years people have said what is this IBMI thing, and when's that going to go away? I don't think that's we're investing in the platform. Our customers like the features and functions that we're giving them, and some of this technology stuff of where do I want to run it, just kind of gives them the flexibility. And there are SaaS offerings, and we have ISVs that run on IBMI offering their software as SaaS. So again, a customer who chooses a SaaS option to get an application that they don't own, they just get as a service, could actually be running on IBMI.
And they don't even know. That's kind of that market that Tim talks about. That's the hidden market. It's not only those who are legates, it's those who run as a cloud service. I want to talk about, I had a customer just, I think on Monday, actually almost started crying and tearing up because they've been working on getting rid of the IBMI for 10 years and they're down to just a small skeleton team, but yet IBMI is still running the business, and every time they try to switch, the other new platform doesn't perform, doesn't scale. It just is really a bad decision for that organization, and it's so sad to talk to customers like that, but there are people leaving and they don't want to leave. There's just that which speaks, I think, to this slide here. And Dan and Steve, if you could talk first towards why customers feel so high about this platform from a return on investment standpoint.
Yeah, well, the I stands for integration, right? And so when you buy IBM Power, you are getting so much more than just a base operating system, and that the whole business thought process behind this architecture is you will have a better ROI. So the clients who are engaging in the survey recognize that value. When you go, and we're going to talk in a minute about staffing, you cannot run businesses of the size that our customers run on another platform and do it with as few people as they do on IBMI. That return on investment right there is important. And then you don't have to buy nearly as many software packages and maintenance packages, et cetera, again, because of the integration and the automation that we put into the platform.
And Dan?
Yeah, I echo what Steve said, and add that, like when we look at our Net Promoter Score surveys, where we're asked the customers, from a support standpoint, from an offering standpoint, we're one of the highest within IBM, one of the highest in the industry. Customers continually say, hey, I'm satisfied with what you're doing. I would recommend it to my friends and family. And I think some of that is we listen to our customers. We have these different groups that we get feedback. We ask for customers to submit requests for enhancements or ideas, and we listen and we deliver those. As Steve showed, the constant drumbeat of twice yearly TRs, which we don't plan to stop, new releases and functions, and then different things like packaging. Middle of last year, we did a simplification effort where we took some of our products that we charged you for. Now we kind of made them no charge as to give our customers better value there. So I think we're hopefully listening and reacting and doing the things that based on everything that IBMI can deliver, we're doing other things to just keep this a relevant platform.
Very good, thank you. So let's talk about the demographics here, and I will handle this slide. And this year we had 300 respondents to our survey, and a bit down, but 9 years later, we've been asking a lot of the same questions of many of you, and we're not giving you, let's see, a Subway gift card or an Amazon gift card or Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever else that you might want for a gift card to fill out the survey. So we do have customers that spend probably 20 to 30 minutes doing the survey. So I'm going to look into seeing how we can maybe shorten some things up and make it quicker so that it's not as time consuming for people to respond to the survey. But you'll notice that we had a good a geographic representation, with 45% US, 2% Canada, 8% Latin America, 34% in Europe. So around the globe, a nice coverage. And then if we look at the various sizes of organizations, I think you'll see we had some very large organizations fill out. 14% were from extremely large organizations. And then just, of course, a nice distribution across the rest of the respondents. And then Brandon, what are your thoughts on who responded to the survey?
Yeah, IT manager seems to be the most popular job title year after year on the survey. And I think, the role of IT manager, and many of you in your organizations wear many hats. IT manager, maybe you're also doing accounting and sales and marketing as well. So I think it speaks to the IBMI install base, and our clients are doing so many things at once. And so that's, you talked about the automation of the platform earlier. That seemed to be a key theme, especially throughout the pandemic. So yeah, I think it's a good sign.
Yeah, and Brandon too, what about industries? What do you think about the industries that run on IBMI?
Definitely, yeah. So this is also consistent year to year. Banking, manufacturing seem to be our top two industries. We do a lot in trucking, transportation, logistics as well. So good to see. We play in pretty much every industry out there. So good to see representation across the board.
Yep, I've always been dealing with customers in all these different industries, so it's great to see. And then, from a marketing perspective, I know that you're sharing stories around the platform. What are your comments on that?
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier, but go check out there's the link at the bottom of the slide. Go check out our client story page, and please reach out to me if you want to share your story. We'd love to share your story as well on the page. But we've been doing this since about 2018. Tom, you remember the celebration of the 30th anniversary of IBMI, and
right.
It's been a lot of fun. I've interviewed over 80 clients around the world, I think pretty much on every continent, and pretty much in every industry. And it's been really fun to see all the cool innovations that are happening on the platform. So go check those out.
Absolutely. And then Steve, what's your thought on the staffing around this platform? You've made mention in a few comments around staffing.
Yeah, again, if you look at who answered this survey, there are some large clients who are going to have a larger number of administrators for their worldwide IT organization, but most clients can run and develop without very many folks on this platform. And again, it's part of the value of what we have. I did want to say though, when those larger clients answer 21 plus, I mean, we have some large clients who have a lot of programmers, developers on this platform. The very largest RPG development organization, it has well over 200 RPG programmers in one organization. Wow. So, yep, yeah, they're out there.
I can tell your expertise is in software development too. You know the largest number of RPG programmers, but not the number of partitions.
Amen.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. We have some great highlights again here in the 9th year of the IBMI Marketplace Survey, with 300 customers taking the survey. We had 68% again. Security has been the top thing, but we did see us flip-flop between modernization and high availability. 79% are running multiple partitions. That number keeps growing, a little bit every year. We've seen that over the 9 years. High availability is certainly something that is achievable in this platform, as we see from our respondents. We see this march towards Power 10 now this year. And of course, the customers keeping current on the operating system 7.3, 7.4, and now with the new operating system already 2% of the marketplace on it. And then, I mean, Brandon, the reason I really invited you was from a marketing message. How could you not go out and scream from every corner around the world that IBMI has this great following of satisfied customers who think 95% of the time they're getting the best return on their investment on this platform. So that is a huge number. Kind of timely too. We've had a couple of questions about where do I go for education? Where do I go for resources on this platform? And here's a list of them that I would recommend. If you don't know anything, go here, get started, sign up for IT Jungle, sign up for Common, the community with IBM, the Tech Channel group, MC Press. We have several great individuals who do things like the Incredible I podcast by Peg Tuttle, and Tuborn does the Built on Power newsletter. The iTech group, Service Express, does their newsletters. We got another fellow power champion, and Charlie Garino does iChimes, and then all the local user groups around the globe, Common and various countries around the globe that do these events. And guess what? In today's world, because we are all working in a mobile workforce, we can join these groups from anywhere on the globe. So Fortra, who's Fortra? We are formerly Help Systems for 40 years, believe it or not. We made a name change November 2nd to reflect on our emphasis in the cybersecurity space. Don't forget, though, we are committed to the platform. We'll continue. We have many areas that we do business around the platform, in IBM automation, document management, business intelligence. We help size your next power server platform. We business partner with IBM. We work on BRMS, Power HA, and RDI. Those are very critical applications for this platform. So we continue to do that effort. This is a whole list of everything that the Fortra company does in cybersecurity and automation. Maybe a little bit of shortage of time, but you'll get some handouts, and certainly we have recorded today's event. I want to do our last polling question while we answer a few questions here. Let's see here. Apologize, I got to pull up the right polling question. So, we're here to help you out. So some things you might be interested from Fortra is free security scans, a discussion around HA, a discussion around document management, business intelligence, and automation for IBM I. Please answer that while we handle some questions here. Okay, so one of the questions we had from Tricia was, is there a list of resources around social networking groups, user groups, email groups, and other places to keep tabs on what's happening? Steve, Will, what do you think? Where do you recommend people go for that information?
It's a great question, because a lot of different people try to keep those lists. We, off the IBM I site, have a beginning place. The list that Tom included here is useful. If you happen to be in the development community, you could even go to the LinkedIn group for IBM I, because there are a lot of IBM I developers who are paying attention on the LinkedIn group. So yes, it can be difficult to find a starting place, but if you find one group, whether it's through the LinkedIn group or in an open source River conversation or whatever, you can get from there to most any place. If you start on the IBM I homepage with our list of user groups, you'll probably get there to those discussion groups as well.
Okay.
Can I pipe up here for a second?
Sure,
Tom?
go ahead. Yeah.
So every Wednesday, story number 4 in our newsletter is what we call 400 Monitor, and it does exactly that. We gather all the relevant news from all around the internet, and it's not just us, all the different upcoming events and webinars and whatnot. So we try to do that. I'm not going to say we're going to do it at a depth that for every developer in the world, but it's a very general kind of list of all the user group meetings, webinars, and that kind of stuff that are coming up for the forward for like a month. So it gives you
very good. I appreciate that. And I apologize to everybody. We got started on time, but I had a little audio outage, so I'm gonna wrap things up a little earlier. We do have a few additional questions out there. Tricia had one about chargeback. I think you guys see that, and maybe we can answer that offline through email out to her, and then a few other questions. So we'll take them that way. I want to thank all of you as customers for joining us today, and I also want to thank all of our great guests that we had today from IBM and IT Jungle. It's a very vibrant community around the IBM I platform, and we wish all of you a great 2023. We will see you in 2024 on the 10th IBM I Marketplace Survey. Thank you very much.